You have been doing everything right, and nothing on the outside has changed for a long time. That absence of visible progress is not failure. Machiavelli identified it as the exact condition that precedes the most complete transformations a person can undergo. And the silence is doing something you cannot see. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly what this season is building, why it has to feel like nothing, and the one mistake that destroys the entire process right before it was about to pay off. Let's start with the chamber, because once you understand what it actually is, this season stops feeling like punishment. There is a process in metallurgy called annealing. A piece of metal is sealed inside a chamber, heated to an extreme, and then held there, completely still, completely contained, for far longer than seems necessary to anyone watching from outside. Nothing visible happens during this stage. No hammer strikes, no shaping, no external evidence that anything productive is occurring at all. To an observer, the metal simply sits in the heat, sealed away, doing nothing. But inside the chamber, at a level no observer could see, the internal structure of the metal is being completely reorganized. The molecular lattice that determined its previous strength and its previous limitations is dissolving, and a new structure is forming in its place. One capable of holding a kind of pressure the original metal could never have survived. If you open the chamber too early, you would not find a transformed metal. You would find a half-formed structure, weaker than the original, ruined by premature exposure to a world it was not yet ready to meet. Machiavelli wrote about this exact dynamic in political terms, observing that the alliances and the men who endured the longest periods of apparent stillness, exile, obscurity, the absence of any visible advancement, were consistently the ones who emerged with the most complete and durable forms of power. He noted that the prince who rushed his own development, who forced visible progress before the internal restructuring was complete, built a position that looked impressive and collapsed at the first real pressure. You are inside the chamber right now. The stillness you have been experiencing, the season where nothing on the outside seems to be moving, where your effort has not yet produced the visible result you expected, is not the absence of progress. It is the heat doing its work. But here is what almost nobody tells you about this stage, and it is the part that determines whether the chamber produces something stronger or something ruined. The reason the chamber has to be sealed, completely, without exception, is that the reorganization happening inside it is fragile in a very specific way. It is not fragile because it is weak. It is fragile because it is incomplete, and incomplete structures cannot survive contact with conditions designed for the finished version. This is where the psychological parallel becomes precise, rather than poetic. Quote, "Black mat. During a period of internal restructuring, when you were quietly developing a skill, recovering from a loss, building towards something that has not yet produced visible results, your internal architecture is in the same state as that metal mid-anneal. The old structure has already begun dissolving. The new one has not yet solidified. An exposure to the full pressure of external judgment, comparison, or premature performance during this exact window does not simply slow the process down. It can ruin the structure permanently." This is why Machiavelli was so specific about the danger of revealing your position before it was secure. He was not only protecting against rivals discovering your plans. He understood something about the internal state of a person mid-transformation, that the same exposure, which a finished, hardened position can withstand easily, will fracture a position that is still forming. Think about the times you have tried to explain an unfinished idea to someone too early, and watched their skepticism or confusion make the idea feel smaller and less real, even to you. Think about the times you have compared your unfinished progress to someone else's finished result, and felt the comparison itself drain the conviction you needed to keep building. That is the chamber being opened too early. That is the half-formed structure, meeting conditions it was never ready to survive. The chamber has to be sealed, not because secrecy is inherently virtuous, but because the thing developing inside it is, for a defined period, genuinely unable to withstand what is on the other side of the door. The journey. There is a specific moment when the chamber is supposed to open, and almost everyone gets the timing wrong in one of two directions. Understanding which direction you are at risk of is the difference between a transformation that holds and one that collapses. The first failure is opening the chamber too early. This is the most common, and it happens for an understandable reason. The stillness becomes unbearable before the process is finished. You have been sealed in this quiet, undramatic period for longer than you expected, with no external confirmation that anything is working. and the discomfort of that uncertainty becomes louder than the discipline required to stay inside it. So you force the door open. You announce the unfinished project. You measure yourself against a finished standard while still mid-formation. You abandon the slow internal work in favor of something that produces a visible, immediate result, even though that visible result is built on a structure that is not yet hardened. Machiavelli observed this pattern in princes who, unable to tolerate the appearance of weakness during a necessary period of consolidation, exposed themselves prematurely and lost everything they had been quietly building. The chamber opened too soon does not produce a smaller version of the intended transformation. It produces a collapse. The second failure is rarer, but it deserves a moment of honesty. Opening the chamber too late, or never trusting that the heat has finished its work at all. Some people become so attached to the safety of the sealed, undramatic stage that they never test whether the internal restructuring is actually complete. They mistake the comfort of remaining hidden for the discipline of remaining hidden for a reason, and they stay sealed long after the metal has already hardened, afraid that opening the door will reveal the process failed, when in fact it succeeded long ago and is simply waiting to be used. Both failures come from the same root, a misreading of what the stillness is for. It is not punishment to be escaped the moment it becomes uncomfortable, and it is not a permanent shelter to be defended indefinitely. It is a process with a natural completion point, and the work is learning to recognize that point honestly, rather than reacting to either the discomfort of staying or the fear of leaving. There is one signal Machiavelli returned to repeatedly when describing the readiness of a position to finally be revealed, and it is more reliable than any external timeline or any comparison to someone else's visible progress. The signal is this: the internal sense of necessity has changed shape. In the early and middle stages of the chamber, your motivation to keep building is driven largely by the discomfort of not yet having arrived, the anxious, restless energy of incompleteness, the awareness of a gap between where you are and where you are trying to be. This energy is necessary to begin the process, but it is not the same energy that indicates the process is finished. When the structuring is genuinely complete, the quality of the internal experience shifts. The anxious need to prove the progress to anyone watching quiets. The comparison to other people's visible results loses its sting, not because you no longer notice it, but because it no longer threatens the structure of what you have built. You begin to feel less like someone waiting to be validated, and more like someone who is simply, factually, different than they were when the chamber sealed, regardless of whether anyone outside has noticed yet. That shift from anxious incompleteness to quiet, undemonstrated certainty is the signal that the heat has finished its work. It does not arrive on the timeline you expected. It does not arrive because enough time has passed by the calendar. It arrives when the internal architecture has actually finished reorganizing, which is a psychological process, not a scheduling one. Trust that signal over the calendar. Trust it over the comparison. Trust it over the discomfort of the silence, which will try to convince you the process has failed, simply because it has taken longer than you wanted it to. There is a part of your life right now that feels like it is going nowhere. Maybe it is a skill you have been quietly developing without anything to show for it yet. Maybe it is a recovery from something that broke you, and you are tired of waiting to feel like yourself again. Maybe it is simply the accumulated weight of a season that has demanded everything from you and given nothing back that anyone else could see. Consider, just for the length of this thought, that you are not behind. You are not failing. You are not the only one whose chamber has stayed sealed longer than felt reasonable. You are mid-anneal. The lattice is reorganizing. The heat has not finished its work yet, and that is not a flaw in the process. It is the process. The door will open when the structure is ready to meet the world it is being built for, not a day before, and if you stay honest with yourself, not a day after either. One question: what would change about how you are carrying this season if you trusted completely that the silence was building something rather than proving you had failed? Drop NAE in the comments if this gave language to something you have been carrying without words for it. I will be reading every one.